Good evening, Mr. President, board members, Madam Student Trustee. It's my pleasure tonight to talk a little bit about where we're at. President Balzerini talked about flying a plane while building it. Well, we've been doing that for quite some time now, and with the passage of Measure L and looking at building a new school in Village C, which is now Hanson, we are literally preparing to build the plane with real stuff, which is why I'm going to make the presentation and give a short update to explain some of the things that are going on. Over the past couple of weeks, a lot of things that have been in motion are going to start settling into place. One of those I will speak to in a moment. We haven't been able to speak publicly about because of the requirements and restrictions when you get into a legal dispute over a contract. I'm going to divulge some information tonight because I can, but it's important to keep moving forward information as we go. So first and foremost, Measure L passed with a 62.07% passage rate within 1 percentage point of where it polled. What that did was allow us to move forward a set of projects tied to a resolution passed by the board. In that resolution was a project list. Measure L funds will go to things listed on that resolution project list, and it's important to note that some of those things were specific and some of those things were general on purpose. When you roll out a series of bonds and you gather money in an era of change where technology is taking over the world, you can't be so finite where you pigeonhole yourself into projects that may be obsolete. At the same time, our district and our community knows and has known for quite some time the needs of our district, the high school being a priority. So in that resolution list, which is there's a link that's attached to a presentation I'm going to give in a little bit, that's what's going on. So in order to do a resolution, you have to do a bunch of, jump through a bunch of hoops. And in doing so, because the district's small, we hire lawyers and professional consultants to advise us in what we can and can't do, who do this work all the time. And in the advisory process and putting together the resolution, something was put on there that a well-intended, highly regarded professional missed. And that is what created the contract language dispute with Trimark. There are multiple agreements where Trimark is impacted in terms of their influence historically in the district, primarily the Second Amendment. So when they brought that to our attention, we began a negotiation process. The conflict is essentially about the concept of an undeveloped property versus a developed property. Developed property has something on there and we inhabit it. An undeveloped property does not. There is language in the Second Amendment which contradicts language in the Third Amendment, which has to do with CalPERS's agreement. But nonetheless, it's in there. And the resolution, by putting that item on there, created the conflict. The district, and I want to compliment in particular the board members who, every board member has fought and stood forward for the district's interests and our children's interests, but we had 3 board members who attended meetings with Trimark's principal, and its Sunchaser Holdings is the mother company. President Balzerini, Trustee Pombo, and Trustee Nielsen, all trying to get to a yes. I mean, that was our first meeting. We talked about, well, how are we going to get to yes? Nobody wants this not to happen. What is the deal that we have to make in order to make it work? So Trimark brought forward an agreement that it was tied to 2 things, and I'm going to make this very simple. They're going to agree to pay a tax, and they're going to not pay a fee, a quid pro quo. The impact of not paying that fee has nothing to do with the district. It has to do with CalPERS. So if you think about the original agreement that went forward, that was talked about in the paper, it was always about the district is kind of working out in between 2 big multi-billion-dollar corporations, Sunchaser Holdings and CalPERS. So we've played a proxy role, acknowledging that the resolution was the start of the conversation between the interests of the Second Amendment and the interests of the Third Amendment in the name of the students of our district. And so The quid pro quo required that CalPERS understand what the agreement was, the fee thing, and the fee forgiveness, and what that would require is they would have to understand and work with the district to come up with how we were going to get through all of it. So long story short, late this afternoon, in a conversation with a advisor to CalPERS representing IHP, who represents Mountain House developers in a very complicated hierarchical structure that CalPERS is, we were able to come to consensus on what we were going to do. So, in a very simple statement, the fee issue impacts CalPERS's reimbursement for the money they loaned the district to build Mountain House High School Phase 1 and Phase 2. There's no impact financially on the district for that, but it impacts the reimbursement. In order for that reimbursement to be impactful, Trimark would have to develop its undeveloped properties, which is primarily commercial. When they develop commercial, and we're hearing 15, 20 years out, maybe 10, who knows, the economy's doing some interesting stuff right now, then there would be an impact on CalPERS, their reimbursement. It would slow it down. A developer fee is a loan. The reimbursement pays back the loan. So that's what we've been talking about. It seems intriguing when people say lawsuit, but really in the end, it was a contract violation inspired by a well-intended, highly regarded professional missing something, a district with the passion to complete an amazing 21st century high school, and a series of meetings in which our board, our district, fought for the interests of getting things done. So, because of the conversation this afternoon, I am actually freed up to speak a little bit more publicly to that issue. So that is an update, board members, Mr. President, Madam Trustee, on that situation. Yes, it's been an interesting experience. Now, the gentleman behind me, Mr. Small, is going to talk about a bridge loan. There are two reasons why we're getting a bridge loan. The first and foremost part, and I'll take responsibility for this, we probably could have communicated the permit timelines issue a little bit better. We said it, but we didn't say it loud enough, and now in retrospect, in hindsight, I'm going to speak it very clearly. In order to build the buildings based on the plans that were designed in 2012, we had a timeline. Very similar to the same requirements that were put on the district when it unified that we had 5 years to host a 9-12 program. That's why we had a 47-kid senior class. Not because we forced kids to give up their high school experience, but we had to. That was the rule, the state regulation. And all 47 of them graduated, by the way. But in a similar vein, the design that was drawn up and approved by DSA had to be kept in motion to keep alive by June of this year. Well, June of this year was when we were running a bond election, and there was no way to do it both at the same time. So, with the help of Mr. King and NMR, our architectural firm, we made an agreement with DSA, who could have said no, and created a delay and a cost increase. We were able to move out the project into this September to keep the permits alive. That is why we did work at the tennis courts primarily, is to keep the permits alive. Dirt was scraped, a hole was dug, lime was poured, water was poured on top of it, and that satisfied the DSA. We then added gravel to maintain the purity of the lime. Kept DSA happy. But now I'm happy to report that we have secured a bridge loan, which the district has done successfully in the past, to bridge the gap of the permit deadline. And while we needed time to resolve the conflict over language, which I can report today, not completely done, but in earnest, the agreement has been verbally worked out. So what that means is in a very short period of time, all of this will go away very quickly, including our friends from Trimark have once signed, which will probably be tomorrow, 5 days to remove the suit, of which they filed but never followed through on any of the steps. So full circle. We're going to meet our timeline permit issue. We've resolved the conflict of language with Trimark. We've resolved the reimbursement issue with CalPERS, but with work to do to finalize language. And Mr. Small is going to explain what the bridge loan process is so we can meet our deadline and break ground. And I can proudly announce, now that I'm done, that the effort with Measure L and the support of this community, we will be finishing our high school. And we will be breaking ground in a few weeks. First week of September. Big tractors, the last week of August. So we did it. Bumps, yes. Learning, yes. Oopses, yes. But nobody can say that this district doesn't deliver for its kids and its community because those buildings are getting built. Thank you.
Mr. Small, before your presentation, I just want to acknowledge a couple things.